1994, Russia. An elderly man named Ivan, a former frontline soldier and railway worker, lives in a small town. At his age, he is cheerful, socially active and friendly with his housemates. The only daughter rarely visits Ivan because she lives in another city and is trying to improve her personal life after a divorce. And to make things more convenient, many years ago she left her daughter Katya to be raised by Ivan. He takes care of his granddaughter and loves her because Katya is the most valuable person in his life. In the evening, three friends are drinking on the balcony of a neighboring house and discussing buying a car. The owner of the apartment, Boris, is a businessman and the initiator of constant parties, so he is an ideological leader to whom Igor and Vadim never object. For friends, Wednesday is a special day because girls of easy virtue traditionally come to visit them, but today the friends did not have time to organize everything as usual. Suddenly Boris notices Katya, who is going home, and instructs Vadim to invite her to the apartment. Vadim is Katya's former classmate and considers her a decent girl, so he hesitantly tries to explain that she will not suit them. However, Boris insists, so Igor and Vadim call out to Katya and run out into the street to meet her. They ask her to congratulate Boris on his birthday and have a little drink in pleasant company. Katya agrees, but only for 5 minutes and without alcohol. Friends get to know Katya better, show her the apartment and talk about themselves. Boris is engaged in trade, so he has a large and spacious home, and Igor is a student studying structural linguistics. Friends convince her to drink champagne for the birthday guy, then treat her to sweets with tequila. And very soon Katya starts to feel dizzy. The friends push Katya onto the bed, turn on loud music, and take turns raping the girl, getting even more excited by her resistance. Later, Igor apologizes very much, but Katya is not in the mood to communicate and wants to leave as soon as possible. She hates rapists, so she throws away the $50 that Igor put in her bag. While he runs outside to pick up the money, Vadim suggests that Boris leave early and not attract too much attention today. Boris grins and asks who Katya lives with, because Vadim is not only her classmate, but also a neighbor. Boris finds out about her only relative at retirement age, laughs, and advises Vadim to relax. Katya comes home and cannot hold back her tears, so she has to tell her grandfather everything that happened. She goes to the bathroom, and the angry Ivan arms himself with a kitchen hatchet and goes to take revenge on the offenders. On the way, he is noticed by a local police officer, Lyosha, who has known Ivan for a long time and once nursed little Katya in his arms. Lyosha is upset that Ivan let Katya go into the bathroom and did not immediately take her to the examination, because at the moment she is washing away the evidence. Lyosha advises the angry Ivan to go home and, together with Katya, write a statement to the police. Ivan returns to the apartment and Lyosha calls his colleagues operatives, and with the help of Cunning, they enter the apartment of Boris, who continued the party and did not listen to Vadim. The operatives separate the suspects into different rooms and obtain their sincere confession in writing. Suddenly a police colonel enters the apartment, introduces himself as Vadim's father, and persuades the senior policeman not to take the suspects to the detention center, but to deliver them to the department. The policeman refuses this idea because he understands that in this way he will soften the fate of the accused. A week later, the investigator calls Katya to record her testimony. Katya has gradually recovered from what happened, but she believes that she will no longer have life as before. Katya refuses to go to the police department, but Ivan wants justice, otherwise the rapists will not be punished. At the department, the investigator grins and doesn't believe Katya's tears, and besides them, he has nothing to add to the case. Katya herself agreed to go into the apartment, took the drink herself, and did not want to go to the police for an examination immediately in that day. The investigator interprets all the circumstances in the case in his own way and makes Katya's accusation doubtful, because in his opinion, she may be a typical extortionist who blackmails in such a way to get money from guys. Katya leaves with nothing, and Ivan is angry at the failure of the justice system, and suspects that the influence of Vadim's father and Boris's money stopped the investigation. The accused have long been released and continue to lead a riotous lifestyle, drinking alcohol in their yard, which upsets Ivan even more. This time, he comes closer to the three friends and remembers each of the rapists by sight. Later, the prosecutor closes the case due to the lack of direct evidence, and as a result, the corpus delicti, Ivan sells his home in the village for $5,000, and upon his return he learns from Katya that the colonel, Vadim's father, came, apologized and left a large sum of money. Angry, Ivan takes the envelope, comes to the colonel and throws money at him. Ivan does not yet know how exactly to use his honest 5,000 to restore justice. A few days later, Katya says that a neighbor came by and left the keys to her apartment, because she asked to look after the parrot, and went to the village for 3 weeks. Suddenly, Ivan understands that the Lord himself came to help him, because the windows from his neighbor's apartment ideally overlook Boris's apartment. Ivan goes to Moscow and does not tell Katya for what purpose. He takes gardening supplies with him. At one of the markets in Moscow, Ivan meets weapons sellers and asks where to buy a rifle with an optical sight and a silencer. The sellers take Ivan to the warehouse, show him the most modern sniper rifle, and invite him to check it out. Former frontline soldier Ivan quickly gets used to the new weapon and puts all the bullets exactly on target, which delights the sellers. Ivan returns from Moscow, hides a rifle at the neighbor's flat, and then finds his daughter Olya at home. Ivan's joy from his daughter's visit quickly fades, because a couple of hours later she says that she found out about the sold house and wants to get her half. Olya really needs money to solve problems in her new man's business, but Ivan says that the money has already been spent. Olya was counting on her half, so she says that in this case she will go to the colonel, who offered the money. Ivan becomes furious and throws Olya and her new fiancé out of the house. On Wednesday, Ivan goes out into the yard, where he communicates with friends who play chess and watches them play. As soon as 3 friends arrive, Ivan leaves a bag of groceries near the chess players and leaves. Ivan deliberately portrays a slow and lame grandfather until he disappears from the sight of others. Ivan then breaks into a run and hurries to his neighbor's apartment, where he takes out a rifle and watches the 3 friends through an optical sight. He sees that Igor has a bottle of champagne between his legs and is about to open it. Ivan realizes that the moment is perfect and shoots the bottle. It explodes, and the shocked Igor screams in pain. Ivan quickly returns to the chess player's yard to have an alibi, and from there he watches the ambulance arrive and Igor be hospitalized. Later, the colonel learns from experts that at the scene of the bottle explosion, where Igor became a castrato, the fragments of the bullet have been found. The colonel informs Vadim, his son, about this and asks if there were weapons, drugs or explosives in the apartment. Vadim tells that no, they didn't have any of these, so the colonel still does not understand how this could have happened, but he is sure that it was not an accident. The following Wednesday, Ivan goes out into the yard and watches the balcony of Boris's apartment, when suddenly a new BMW arrives. Boris gets out of it and goes home, and Ivan runs to his neighbor's apartment and prepares a weapon. Later, Boris gets into the car and Ivan loads the incendiary cartridge. The bullet hits the gas tank, so the BMW explodes, and Boris, who miraculously escaped, receives numerous severe burns all over his body. Later, the colonel tells Vadim that he is next, because someone is very tired of their noisy orgies on Wednesdays. Vadim is trying to recover from the shock and drinks a lot of alcohol, because now his friends are unlikely to ever have a party. Although the colonel loves his son, he does not express sympathy and empathy, but only tries to find out who Vadim and his friends have harmed recently. Vadim suddenly remembers the incident with Katya, and the colonel instructs his subordinates to check Ivan's financial activity in recent weeks. The colonel believes that any crime leaves a financial trail, and his intuition does not let him down. Ivan recently sold his house. Later, local police officer Lyosha comes to Ivan's apartment to check on Katya. Lyosha notices keys with an unusual keychain, which he has never seen here before. He learns from Katya about the neighbor's apartment and quietly takes the keys. Later, the colonel with investigators and a search warrant come to Ivan's home and check the apartment for weapons, but find nothing. The colonel provokes Ivan with advice not to miss next time. Ivan, believing in his invulnerability, promises the colonel that he will not miss. Suddenly the doorbell rings from a neighbor who has returned from the village, and the colonel learns about a temporarily empty apartment that Ivan could use. The colonel feels his victory and examines the neighbor's apartment, where he invites Ivan and his investigators. Ivan understands that there is no turning back, but the job is done. He has no regrets. To Ivan's surprise, the rifle is not in its usual place. The angry colonel is sure that Ivan shot and threatens him that if something happens to Vadim. But Ivan suddenly says that it has already happened. Ivan believes that if Vadim is friends with rapists and abuses girls with impunity, hiding behind his father's position, then something has happened to Vadim a long time ago. However, the colonel takes these words literally, falls into hysterics, and rushes home to check if everything is okay with Vadim. By this time, the son had finally succumbed to the mania of persecution, so he does not go outside and moves around the house with a gun in his hands. The colonel cannot get home because the door is bolted from the inside. He shoots at the bolt area when suddenly a return shot occurs and the wounded colonel falls to the floor. The investigator disarms Vadim and calls an ambulance for the colonel. He also asks to take a psychiatrist with when he sees that Vadim is laughing non-stop. Later, local police officer Lyosha sees Ivan passing by and invites him to his home. Lyosha says that Ivan can't throw the tool anywhere and shows the rifle that he managed to hide in time. Lyosha understands how unfair life is, so he won't reveal Ivan's secret. But he will keep the weapon, since his grandfather no longer needs it. Ivan thanks Lyosha for his action and goes home. Later, Katya learns that an unenviable fate befell all three offenders, and for the first time in the last 3 weeks she plays the guitar, because the feeling that she is safe again has begun to return to her.